You ever seen a Mercedes erupt like a volcano, sending black clouds into the crisp Colorado air, turning a pristine driveway into a crime scene while the queen of the neighborhood stands there shrieking like she's been mugged by a coal miner? No. Well, let me pour you a cup of truth, because you're about to hear how one woman's greed got her more famous than she ever wanted to be. Picture this Thursday morning sky, the color of gunmetal, and Delilah Thornfield, our beloved HOA president, decked out in a white designer jacket and enough perfume to knock out a moose standing in her driveway, absolutely losing it. There's black powder on her hairface jacket, even inside her $80,000 Mercedes. You'd think she'd just survived a chimney explosion. She's screaming at the top of her lungs, "You psycho! You tried to kill me!" Meanwhile, half the neighborhood's out filming on their phones. Neighbors peeking from behind curtains, a couple kids giggling, and me. Well, I'm just trying to keep a straight face. But let me rewind. Take you back before the smoke, before the viral videos and police sirens, back to when this story was just about a cold winter and a stolen stack of firewood. My name's Marcus Caldwell. Mac to friends. 52 years old, medically retired Army engineer, Purple Heart, thanks to an IED in Afghanistan and living on a fixed income that'd barely cover the coffee habit of most of my neighbors. Pine Ridge Estates, Colorado. You know the type million-dollar homes, folks who spend more on lawn service in a week than I do for groceries in a month. But I wasn't here for the curb appeal. I came for the mountain air, the silence, and honestly the hope that maybe nobody would bother me. Colorado winters, though, don't care if you're a war hero or just some guy on a pension. When the temperature drops, you either find a way to stay warm or you become a cautionary tale on the evening news. So I spent my last $400 on 2 cords of seasoned oak, stacked them with the same care I used to stack ammo. The smell of pine, the rough feel of the bark, the way the wood thudded as I built my pile, it almost made me forget how tight money was. Almost. Enter Delilah Thornfield, HOA President Real Estate Shark and unofficial neighborhood monarch. Her house was 3 times the size of mine, all professionally landscaped and lit up like a Christmas catalog. She drove a Mercedes that purred like a jungle cat, always washed, always gleaming. 6 years running the HOA, and not a soul dared question her. The woman turned HOA bylaws into personal weapons. Mrs. Lucy had to toss her garden gnomes for being non-compliant with community standards. Rodriguez family repaint their shutters, too much personality. Anyone who sneezed without permission, she fined. You'd think with all that power she'd be happy, but greed, man. It makes people do dumb things. My firewood pile started shrinking. First a couple logs, then an armload. By the 3rd time, a full third was missing. Fresh tire tracks in the mud. My security camera, technical malfunction. Sure. If you believe in coincidences. I did the polite thing first. Knocked on Delilah's marble doorstep, inhaling clouds of her perfume. "Hey, you seen anyone hauling firewood around here?" She looked me up and down like I'd dragged dirt onto her floors. "I have absolutely no idea what you're talking about," she said, draped in cashmere, confidence oozing. "And frankly, your tone is very aggressive." Over her shoulder, I could see my firewood stacked in her yard. Identical logs, same supplier. Hell, my initials were still branded on some pieces. "Mind telling me which supplier you use?" I asked. She just gave me that icy smile. "I don't need to justify my purchases. Maybe you should be more careful with your property." That's when I knew what kind of game we were playing. Delilah was the type to steal your lunch from the office fridge, then help you search for it while she wiped mayo off her lips. So I changed tactics. Pulled up the HOA covenant's 47 pages of legal mumbo-jumbo she wielded like a sword. Funny thing about power, the more you use it, the more mistakes you make. Turns out the original bylaws didn't restrict firewood storage at all, but Delilah's updated version. Suddenly, you could only have decorative logs for community aesthetics. She'd literally rewritten the rules to make my fuel illegal. And surprise, surprise, she'd signed off her own landscaping expenses too, funneling HOA money to her private company. I started documenting. Borrowed Bob's trail camera, pointed it right at my woodpile. 3 days later, bingo. Camera caught her teenage son loading up logs at dawn, Delilah supervising from her idling Mercedes. She was too arrogant to realize she was building a case against herself. I confronted her with the footage. She tried to spin it. "Those logs are a fire hazard. I was protecting the community." Except the rule she cited didn't even exist. When the lies didn't work, she turned up the heat. Started whispering around the neighborhood Mac's unstable, dangerous veteran, threatened violence over firewood. Suddenly, I'm public enemy number one. But here's the thing. You don't make it out of war without learning a thing or two about persistence. I filed formal complaints, dug up financial records, rallied the neighbors. The more I uncovered, the uglier it got. Phony fees, bogus violations, thousands skimmed for emergency expenses. Bob got cited for having 2 vehicles. Mrs. Rodriguez got a $500 architectural review fee for fixing her porch. Young couples threatened with liens over their kids' swing sets. Then came the twist. Patricia Mills' retired teacher spreadsheets for days revealed her daughter was a paralegal. Turns out Delilah hadn't filed required corporate documents for 3 years. Our HOA legally dead. No power, no authority, no teeth. Every fine, every fee worthless. Instead of nuking her right away, we waited. Let her dig her own grave a little deeper. That's when I discovered she wasn't just stealing wood for her fireplace, she was selling it. Facebook Marketplace, $300 a load, using my logs to bankroll her lifestyle. That's not petty theft, that's organized crime with a Mercedes getaway car. We called a meeting. Patricia brought teachers. Bob called in his vet buddies. Mrs. Rodriguez rallied the Hispanic families. Delilah always seemed to target. When Delilah tried to pack the room with her cronies, the tide had already turned. Patricia stood up, evidence in hand, and laid it all out. Fake firewood rule, black market sales, missing funds. The room went from nervous to angry in under a minute. Delilah lost it. Stormed out screaming about lawsuits. But the damage was done. 3 days later, a sheriff showed up at my door with a restraining order, Delilah's last desperate move. She claimed I was violent. In court, her story fell apart in 10 minutes. The judge dismissed the case and Delilah's meltdown went public. She called code enforcement, claimed I was running an illegal lumber operation. The inspector found nothing but a disabled vet with a modest woodpile and told her, laughing, that chopping wood isn't a crime. Then I started plotting my own brand of justice. Bought a batch of hollow decorative logs, filled them with ultra-fine charcoal powder stuff Bob used for his barbecue business. Added spring-loaded plugs, a little engineering magic. Every log looked real. Only when you picked them up just right, they'd send a cloud of powder everywhere, unforgettable but harmless. I made sure everything was legal checked, the statutes triple-checked with Sarah the paralegal. Delilah kept stealing, kept spreading rumors, now claiming PTSD made veterans a danger to the neighborhood. That was the last straw. The veterans rallied, the families united. We set the trap. Patricia, Bob, Mrs. Rodriguez, and half the neighborhood were on standby phones, out cameras ready. I left for my VA appointment as usual. Delilah couldn't resist. She showed up, her son in tow, loaded their Mercedes with my hollow logs. The explosion of black powder was legendary. The sound alone, neighbors said, echoed down the block. By the time I got home, Delilah looked like she'd tried to rob a chimney. "You maniac! What kind of terrorist are you?" she screamed. "Innocent people don't usually steal someone else's firewood," I replied, trying to hold back a laugh. Bob, ever the backup, stepped in. "That's Mac's wood in your car, Delilah. Care to explain?" Patricia had photos. Mrs. Rodriguez called the cops, and when Officer Martinez and a rock vet himself showed up, Delilah tried to play the victim. But evidence doesn't lie. GPS tracking, video, witnesses, the whole 9 yards. The officer summed it up best, "Ma'am, taking someone else's property is theft. The powder is harmless. The law's pretty clear on this." Delilah tried to pull the veteran discrimination card. Half the room, including Officer Martinez, shot her a look that said, "Nice try." When all else failed, she invoked the fifth at the next HOA meeting on camera in front of the news. The vote to remove her 41-0. Even her friends abandoned ship. 6 months later, Pine Ridge Estates was a new place. Delilah had pleaded guilty, paid restitution, lost her real estate license. Her Mercedes got repossessed, and she moved to a rental across town. The Firewood video went viral. Neighbors started hosting wood-splitting parties instead of HOA fines. The Rodriguez Garden became the new community hub. Bob's garage turned into a workshop for veterans and neighbors to share tools, help each other out. We cut our HOA fees by 40%. Actually used the money for improvements. Built a scholarship fund for local kids. My story even got mentioned by state lawmakers as they drafted tougher HOA regulations. And as for me, I sit by my woodpile, sometimes feeling the mountain air. The satisfaction that comes from knowing I didn't just win, I changed something bigger than myself. But here's what sticks with me. It's not the explosion, not even Delilah's humiliation. It's how long it took. Months of silent suffering, years of bogus fees, a whole neighborhood tiptoeing around a bully. All it took to break the spell was someone asking, "Who gave you the right to take from me?" You want the real lesson. It isn't about firewood or even HOA politics. It's about how easy it is to let anyone abuse a little power until one day you wake up and realize you've been living on your knees for years. So let me ask you, how long would it take you to say enough's enough? Ever stood up to a bully? Ever watched someone else get crushed by rules that only seem to serve the powerful? Share your story below, drop your thoughts about justice power, and where you draw your line in the sand. Hit subscribe if you believe that ordinary people can change broken systems. And remember, sometimes the scariest thing isn't standing up to a bully. It's realizing how long you let them rule your life.
Cảm ơn các bạn đã xem video.